Born in 384 BC on the city of Stagira in northern Greece, Aristotle, the Greek ancient philosopher, later went to become one of the most legendary figures in history. Little is known about Aristotle's life. His father Nicomachus died when Aristotle was a child, and he was brought up by a guardian. At 17 or 18, he joined Plato's academy in Athens and remained there until the age of 37. Shortly after Plato died, Aristotle left Athens and, at the request of Philip II of Macedon, tutored his son Alexander the Great beginning in 343 BC. He established a library in the Lyceum, which helped him to produce many of his hundreds of books on papyrus scrolls. Though Aristotle wrote many elegant treatises and dialogues for publication, only around a third of his original output has survived, none of it intended for publication. Aristotle provided a complex synthesis of the various philosophies existing prior to him. Interestingly enough, his teachings and methods of inquiry have had a significant impact across the world and remain a subject of contemporary philosophical discussion. Aristotle's views profoundly shaped medieval scholarship. The influence of his physical science extended from late antiquity and the early Middle Ages into the Renaissance, and was not replaced systematically until the Enlightenment and theories such as classical mechanics were developed. He influenced Judeo-Islamic philosophies during the Middle Ages as well as Christian theology, especially the Neoplatonism of the early Church and the scholastic tradition of the Catholic Church. Aristotle was revered among medieval Muslim scholars as the first teacher, and among medieval Christians like Thomas Aquinas as simply the philosopher, while the poet Dante called him the master of those who know. His works contain the earliest known formal study of logic, and were studied by medieval scholars such as Peter Abelard and Jean Buridan. Aristotle's influence on logic continued well into the 19th century. In addition, his ethics, although always influential, gained renewed interest with the modern advent of virtue ethics. When Aristotle was appointed as the head of the Royal Academy of Macedon, he gave lessons not only to Alexander, but also to two other future kings, Ptolemy and Cassander. By 335 BC, Aristotle had returned to Athens, establishing his own school there known as the Lyceum. Aristotle conducted courses at the school for the next 12 years. While in Athens, his wife Pythias died, and Aristotle became involved with Herpyllis of Stagira. This period in Athens between 335 and 323 BC is when Aristotle is believed to have composed many of his works. He wrote many dialogues, of which only fragments have survived. His most important treatises include Physics, Metaphysics, Nicomachean Ethics, Politics, On the Soul, and Poetics. Near the end of his life, Alexander and Aristotle became estranged over Alexander's relationship with Persia and Persians. A widespread tradition in antiquity suspected Aristotle of playing a role in Alexander's death, but the only evidence of this is an unlikely claim made some 6 years after the death. Following Alexander's death, anti-Macedonian sentiment in Athens was rekindled. In 322 BC, Demophilus and Eurymedon, the Hierophant, reportedly denounced Aristotle for impiety, prompting him to flee to his mother's family estate in Chalcis, on Euboea, at which occasion he was said to have stated, "I will not allow the Athenians to sin twice against philosophy," a reference to Athens' trial and execution of Socrates. He died in Chalcis, Euboea, of natural causes later that same year, but his ideas still live to this day. Now let's uncover some of his work in greater depth. Aristotle examines the concepts of substance and essence in his Metaphysics, and he concludes that a particular substance is a combination of both matter and form, a philosophical theory called hylomorphism. In Book 2, he distinguishes the matter of the substance as the substratum, or the stuff of which it is composed. For example, the matter of a house is the bricks, stones, timbers, or whatever constitutes the potential house, while the form of the substance is the actual house, namely, covering for bodies and chattels or any other differentia that let us define something as a house. The formula that gives the components is the account of the matter, and the formula that gives the differentia is the account of the form. Aristotle's natural philosophy spans a wide range of natural phenomena, including those now covered by physics, biology, and other natural sciences. Aristotle's work encompassed virtually all facets of intellectual inquiry. He makes philosophy in the broad sense coextensive with reasoning, which he also would describe as science. However, his use of the term science carries a different meaning than that covered by the term scientific method. For Aristotle, all science is either practical, poetical, or theoretical. His practical science includes ethics and politics. His poetical science means the study of fine arts, including poetry. His theoretical science covers physics, mathematics, and metaphysics. Aristotle suggested that the reason for anything coming about can be attributed to 4 different types of simultaneously active factors. His term adia is traditionally translated as cause, but it does not always refer to temporal sequence. It might be better translated as explanation, but the traditional rendering will be employed here. Material cause describes the material out of which something is composed. Thus, the material cause of a table is wood. It is not about action. It does not mean that one domino knocks over another domino. The formal cause is its form. That is the arrangement of that matter. It tells one what a thing is. That a thing is determinate by the definition form, pattern, essence, whole, synthesis, or archetype. Plainly put, the formal cause is the idea in the mind of the sculptor that brings the sculpture into being. A simple example of the formal cause is the mental image or idea that allows an artist, architect, or engineer to create a drawing. The efficient cause is the primary source, or that from which the change under consideration proceeds. It identifies what makes of what is made and what causes change of what is changed, and so suggests all sorts of agents, non-living or living, acting as the sources of change or movement or rest. Representing the current understanding of causality as the relation of cause and effect, this covers the modern definitions of cause as either the agent or agency or particular events or states of affairs. In the case of 2 dominoes, when the first is knocked over, it causes the second also to fall over. In the case of animals, this agency is a combination of how it develops from the egg and how its body functions. The final cause is its purpose, the reason why a thing exists or is done, including both purposeful and instrumental actions and activities. The final cause is the purpose or function that something is supposed to serve. This covers modern ideas of motivating causes, such as volition. In the case of living things, it implies adaptation to a particular way of life. Aristotle's Phychology, given in his treatise on the soul, posits 3 kinds of soul, psyches: the vegetative soul, the sensitive soul, and the rational soul. Humans have all 3. The vegetative soul is concerned with growth and nourishment. The sensitive soul experiences sensations and movement. The unique part of the human, rational soul is its ability to receive forms of other things and to compare them using the nous, intellect, and logos, reason. This was a very important distinction by Aristotle, as it formed the substantial basis of the division between a left and a right hemisphere in the brain, which wasn't fully clarified until the 19th century. If we are going to study the teacher of Alexander the Great, we must talk about ethics. Aristotle taught that virtue has to do with the proper function, ergon, of a thing. An eye is only a good eye in so much as it can see, because the proper function of an eye is sight. Aristotle reasoned that humans must have a function specific to humans, and that this function must be an activity of the soul, in accordance with reason. Aristotle identified such an optimum activity, the virtuous mean, between the accompanying vices of excess or deficiency. Of the soul as the aim of all human deliberate action, eudaimonia, generally translated as happiness, or sometimes well-being. To have the potential of ever being happy in this way necessarily requires a good character, ethike arete, often translated as moral or ethical virtue or excellence. Aristotle taught that to achieve a virtuous and potentially happy character, requires a first stage of having the fortune to be habituated not deliberately, but by teachers and experience, leading to a later stage in which one consciously chooses to do the best things. When the best people come to live life this way, their practical wisdom and their intellect can develop with each other towards the highest possible human virtue, the wisdom of an accomplished theoretical or speculative thinker, or in other words, a philosopher. Focusing on all the work of Aristotle is impossible to do with just one video. This man created theories that had and still have humanity debating over 2,000 years after his life. Multiple religions called him special, and his beliefs have been systematized similarly to Plato into forming Aristotelianism. His influence is undeniable and his genius was way ahead of its time.